But it's funny because you can argue crypto is not common sense, and you can argue it is common sense. So
Yeah.
it is interesting.
Yeah, you
Depends which
could.
part of crypto you're talking about, I guess.
Yeah, I think for me, like for me, the way crypto's been is not common sense. Like it just isn't. We're not. The industry's not implementing what would be common sense. Quick plug for ourselves. I think Divi is implementing what is common sense. So
That's right.
we'll get there one day.
That's right.
Yeah, I
That's
think
right.
so. I think that's the whole goal is to make it to way the way it was. I hate to even express it that way, but there was an intended
Yeah.
outcome for crypto, and I can preach and teach certain things and certain philosophies, but we can absolutely state that crypto as a whole has moved away from what the original principle and philosophies
No,
were.
when I
That's
talk
all I
about
would
this with
say.
people, it's absolutely, I say this is the blockchain that it's Satoshi intended. And I 100% believe that, right? The idea of bridges is, you know, anathema, like would have been to him. Like he would have been like, what are you
Yeah.
guys doing? So,
Yeah, you're
and then
right.
everything else that came out of that, all the custody, all the centralized solutions, everything, like, I mean, I am assuming he's dead. But so I'm going to say rolling in his grave because for me, the way this industry has evolved, we've definitely experimented on a lot of things, and that experimentation has led us away from the core concepts that would bring a rock solid global economy. And this is absolutely the kind of language I use when I talk to people about what we're doing.
So I totally agree. However, I think it would be kind of utopic to imagine any other direction, right? Like you have someone who has a new approach to something and then he sets a new direction, but then the ones who will continue that direction, they're not that person. So obviously they will go in a like what they can,
Yeah.
and we've seen
And
that
that's what happened.
what they can is
Yeah.
obviously not um, completely what was actually pretty far away for some of the things that we've seen over the last few years. However, you can still see that some projects, and again, I'll talk about us, but I'm sure some others are actually looking at developing the same core principles of what Satoshi said for what Bitcoin, what Bitcoin was supposed to be as money and
Oh,
as
totally.
basically the for the
Yeah.
monetary
Don't get me
system. But
wrong.
sorry,
Like I think, don't get me wrong. I think a lot of people built their own blockchain with Satoshi's principles in it, but
Yes.
created their own silo. And so if we're looking at it as a whole industry or whole economy, that's
Yeah.
the thing that went away from it. Both Voice and I were in crypto at the time Ethereum was growing, and there were a couple years in there where publicly they would ask, "We're not sure what this is for." Like we
Yeah.
built this world computer and we're looking for applications for it. And that was before like the ICO craze and all that kind of stuff. I like token to do the thing is what came out of that. So evolution, there wasn't a way to do of bonding blockchains directly together. There wasn't a way, or even people being, or even it being palatable to people to say, yeah, I'm building this blockchain, it's the better Bitcoin or it's whatever. And then of course, and then say, oh, we want to bond it to another one. I'm using the word bond, but I mean directly connect to another one. Like that just wasn't, nobody was thinking that way because they're all building better Bitcoins or more
And
that's right.
programmable
they're
Bitcoins.
still
Yeah.
loosely, I would say, no, in the broad general sense, they gave up on that. And what they
Yeah.
did is because I would say that there is a break in time where I would have agreed with you about the philosophy of what was thought about and where it began and where there is a break. So I would say yes, earlier on, blockchains that were either forks or new ideas did have that principle of what that basic philosophy, but we reach a point in time and it is right there at Ethereum that it all falls apart. it's right there at Ethereum that that philosophy changes, that people are willing to accept other things, such as the words we will choose to use, like trust minimized and those kinds of things. And they've leaned into the marketing, and that marketing then obfuscates that term, and it really doesn't send a message. Users, most of which are still not even at the basic 101 level of crypto education, don't know the difference, but they get experience through unfortunate events. I was almost going to say a series of unfortunate events, but that's a show, right? But it is. It's usually small things that become something big. And I think that's kind of where we are today on this updates, is those situations that we either voluntarily get into, or situations that we through naivete get into, can cause us problems.
I think we'll circle back to this when we talk about some of the news items we have for today.
So just to add,
So
I
yeah,
think it's not isolated to crypto also, because you were saying like they all went into creating the new Bitcoin, and of course, like some people wanted, like they thought they actually had a fix or whatever, and actually there are coins that
yeah,
are still here today that fork Bitcoin and improved or made some modification that they considered improvement, or sometimes even more aligned with Satoshi's principle. But at the end of the day, we know very well, the three of us, how difficult it is to organize founding behind an ID, behind a new
yeah,
technology. And so I can imagine that uh, other people went through the exact same things. And obviously, I think they quickly see, like us, that the technology is not really what gets the most funding, right?
yeah.
And I think it started a certain way, and it kind of exploded completely in like
Yeah.
2017 to 2021, where the actual technology became almost not important.
Superfluous.
And
Yeah,
then yeah, and then all the rest became a lot more important.
It's
And another thing that I wanted to add about the things started to turn bad with Ethereum, one thing that is also important to see, I think, is that it opened the gates for everybody to create something on blockchain. And obviously everybody is not a blockchain developer.
yeah.
And obviously the first things they got attracted by is money making, right? And
yeah,
so
of
that's
course. Yeah,
exactly what we've seen over the last like 6 years, almost now 7 years. And yeah, I think this is why. So in one way, opening a market has advantages, but it also a lot of time drags down the quality of is actually on the
Sure,
market.
sure.
So
I think you're right. I think you and I have had this conversation. Neeks and I have had this conversation, that because you make something wildly open, and for the most, we could say programmatic, or we could say from a developer perspective, a very open system from a developer perspective, but because of the naivete, even in that group, thinking that it's just about development and just about making it easy, or just about making it accessible, that's where these sort of holes begin to appear. And so maybe I would rephrase it, saying it's not necessarily right at the gate of Ethereum, and that's where I agree with you, but that's where the fork in the road happened. That's probably
yeah,
the best way
yeah,
I could state it. And once you're on that fork moving away, it's like anything else. It's a set point. Once you've adjusted that set point, it's easy to readjust that set point again, and I think that's been fraught in that blockchain from the beginning.